Hi physics friends, I'm happy to meet you once again, and you are really looking so bright. Yeah, I can see you. Towakan, I can see you. I see you looking bright. You're very attentive. You're very good children. Yes, we shall not waste time because you have had a lot of fun and now you are very ready to learn something new. Do you remember what we talked about last time? We talked about pronouns, where we said that to avoid the awkward repetition of a noun or a word functioning as a noun, the best writer or speaker of English uses another part of speech we call pronouns. We said that pronouns are words we use in the places of nouns or words functioning as nouns to avoid repetition. Okay? The words we use in the places of nouns or words functioning as nouns to avoid repetition. And we talked about personal pronouns. We said they refer to the person speaking, the first person, the person spoken to, that was our second person, and the person spoken about, that was our third person. And when we talked about the personal pronouns, we had them in many forms. The first form we had was the subjective form, where the pronoun is the subject, the doer of the action, or the main character of the sentence, or in the sentence. We had the subjective form of the first person, the second person, and the third. Then we talked about the objective form of a pronoun, where the pronoun is the receiver of the action. The subject is doing the action, then the object receiving the action. So we have the objective form of the pronouns, where the pronouns are receiving the action, where the I became me, we became us, she became her, he became him, they became them. Okay? You remember? Also, the possessive pronouns and then the reflexive pronouns. You remember the reflexive pronouns? I told you, friends, that we write them as single words. Himself, myself, himself, ourselves, and you remember. But today, we are going to another type of pronouns. We are going to look at relative and interrogative pronouns. Relative and interrogative pronouns. Let us begin with interrogative pronouns. First of all, the word interrogative alone means question form. So when I talk about the interrogative pronouns, I simply mean that these pronouns we use in question forms. We use them to ask questions. We use them to ask questions. And the answers to these questions, need information, not just a yes or a no. You know, someone can ask you a question. Are you okay? You say yes. Have you eaten food? You say no. But if someone says, where are you going? Can you say yes? Can you say no? Where are you going? Can you say no? You see? So these relative pronouns, these interrogative pronouns, once used in questions, the answers to those questions need some more information, not just a yes and a no. Okay? So the answers have to be detailed. There is information needed. Okay? These interrogative pronouns are normally used in section B. You remember comprehension, where you read the given text, answer the question. And why do we say answer in full sentences? Why do we say answer in full sentences? Simply because we answer in full sentences simply because there is information needed. Okay? The interrogative pronouns include who, whose, whom, which, and what. If someone says, whose ruler is this? Can you say no? That will not be an answer to this question. Even if you say yes, that will not be an answer to this question. So interrogative pronouns produce information questions that require more than a yes or a no. Okay? As I told you, what do you do at your leisure? Can you say no? You will not say no. What do you do at your leisure? You may have to explain. I go swimming at my leisure. You see, you need to give some information. I go swimming at my leisure. Who is there? You cannot say no. That will not be an answer to this question. You can not say, who is there? No. Who is there? Yes. No. Who is there? You will say, Prince is there. Okay? Whose orchard is being talked about in the story? You will not say no, my friend. Say, Mr. Okanye's orchard is being talked about in the story. So those are interrogative pronouns. We use them to ask questions that need information in their answers. Okay, friends, having looked at the interrogative pronouns, the ones we use to ask questions that need information apart from, not just a yes and a no, let us look at the relative pronouns. Why, first of all, why are they called relative pronouns? Yeah, they are relative pronouns. Why are they called relative pronouns? A relative pronoun is a noun, is a pronoun that introduces a relative clause. You see, this is the reason why they are called relative pronouns, because their work is to introduce a relative clause. A relative clause can also be called an adjective clause. Adjective clause. We are going to look at it. Okay? So, it is called a relative because it is related. See, it is related to the word that its relative clause modifies. So we call them relative pronouns. One, because they introduce relative clauses. Relative clauses. And they are related to the word. The word they link to the relative clause. Let us look at this one. The person who phoned me last night. The person who phoned me last night is my friend. Who is our relative pronoun? This who refers to the person. The person who. This who refers to the person. So in other words, this word who is directly related to the subject. And the subject here is the person. And it introduces us to the relative clause. The relative clause is here. Phoned me last night. Okay? Phoned me last night. It is a relative pronoun, one, because it is directly related to the subject, and it introduces us to the relative clause. Okay? So, the person who phoned me last night is my friend. I am saying that in the above example, who relates to the person. I have already told you that. And it modifies our relative clause. Our relative clause is also known as our adjective clause. Why are we calling it an adjective clause? Because it describes the subject. It describes the subject in that sentence. That's why we call it an adjective clause. You know, adjectives describe, they talk about. Okay? They talk about. So we call it an adjective clause because it describes the subject. What the subject is or what the subject did. This clause tells us what the subject is or what the subject did. We have 5 basic relative pronouns, 5 of them. The first one we have looked at is who. Then we have another one, whom. Then we have whose, which, and that. These are basically the 5 relative pronouns. Who, whom, whose, which, and then that. I want us to look at them one by one. One by one. Who is used as a subject. Actually, it describes a subject. Remember, when we are talking about the personal pronouns, we talked about the subject and the object. The subject being the doer, the main character in the sentence, and then the object being the receiver of the action, being the receiver of the verb. So we say who modifies a subject, whom modifies an object. Okay? Who modifies or describes a subject, then whom modifies or simply say describes an object. And they refer to only people, not animals, not benches, not televisions, not chairs. They only refer to people. Who and whom refer to people. Who refers to the subject and whom refers to an object. We are going to look at it. Then we have whose, that is for possession. It shows possession, belonging, ownership. Okay? And then we have which. Actually, we have also which. We have which that is used for only particular things. So we can use which to refer to a particular person. For example, if we have 6 boys in this class, we have 6 boys in this class, but we want the particular boy, that one who sat at the teacher's desk. So, which boy sat at the teacher's desk? That one in particular, the one among the many, the one that sat at the teacher's desk. So we shall be asking for that particular one who sat at the teacher's desk. Then we have that. That also can be used to refer to things or to people. Okay? Also for definite, also for particular persons. Okay? Particular subjects and particular objects. Okay? And these relative pronouns do not refer to particular sex. That maybe this one is for males and this one is for females. No. Okay? They refer to all, to both males and females. Not just saying that that refers to only females and this one refers to only males. No. Also, we don't have that this is a singular who and this is the plural who. No. Who can refer to a singular subject or a plural subject. Okay? Let us look at them in sentences. How do we use them in sentences? First of all, we said they introduce the relative or the adjectival clause. Let us look at this sentence. That is the person dash I love. If we say, that is the person dash I love. You will see I, the subject, because I does the action to love. But who is loved? In other words, who receives this action this person. Which pronoun are we using to describe this person who receives the action love is whom? Because you remember, we said that whom refers to the object, the receiver of the action. Okay? That is why you see here, that is the person whom I love. I do the action I do is to love, but the loved one is the person whom refers to. Okay? So you can see the relative pronoun is whom, and the adjectival clause, we called it an adjectival clause because it describes either the subject or the object. And for this matter, for this case here, we have the object. So the adjectival clause is this one. Remember we said the relative pronoun introduces us to the relative clause or the adjectival clause. So this one is now our adjectival clause. Let us look at another sentence. The person who gets the highest score gets the gold medal. The person who gets the highest score gets the gold medal. This who refers to the person. This one is the subject because it will do the action getting the highest score. Remember in the first sentence, this person was loved. The person we are talking about does not love in the first sentence, but that person is loved. That means that person receives the action. But when you go to the second sentence, this person gets. In other words, this person does the action. That is why you see here we are using who, because who refers to the subject and whom refers to the object. So the person who gets the highest score gets the gold medal. Our adjectival clause is this: from who up to score. That is our adjectival clause. We can also call it the relative clause. Why? It describes this one, the subject. Let us look at another one more example. The car that we bought doesn't run well. The car that we bought doesn't run well. That refers to the car. That is the car. We bought that car. That is the car. So it becomes a relative pronoun that refers to the subject. The subject. The main thing we are talking about in the sentence. In other words, the character in this sentence is the car. And we are using that to take us to the relative clause, to the adjectival clause. Okay? Let us look at more sentences. Who, let us begin with who and that. Remember we said that who and that describe the person. What a person is or what a person does. And particularly the subject. The person, subject. The doer of the action or the main character in the sentence. We have looked at some sentences. Still, we can have this one, that the man who came here yesterday has died. So, we can actually remove who from this sentence and put that, and that sentence will be correct. If you say, the man that came here yesterday has died, that sentence is correct. Okay? If you look at which and that, remember we said that and which are also used to describe particular subject or object. Here we are using that to describe the person's subject, but we can also use that to describe the object. Now, when we are using that here, we can refer to person or thing. But remember, who only refers to people. But that can refer to a person or a thing. If we say, I sit at the desk that faces the window. You see? We say, I sit at the desk that faces the window. In this sentence, we can remove that and put which and say, I sit at the desk which faces the window. In other words, there are very many desks in class. You see? You can see how many we have. But we are talking about that particular one that faces the window. I had given you an example before. Which boy sat at the teacher's desk? You can see. Which boy hit you with a stick? In other words, there are very many. But we want that particular one. Who did hit you with a stick? Whom describes a person object. This one we had talked about it. Let us see how we can use it in another sentence, in addition to what we had looked at prior. The lady with whom I traveled to Iganga is a lawyer. In other words, I traveled with a lady. I traveled with a lady. That lady is a lawyer. And then they will say, rewrite as one sentence and use whom. I traveled with a lady. That lady is a lawyer. Rewrite as one sentence using whom. This is what we shall have. The lady with whom I traveled to Iganga is a lawyer. Yes, we can use whom with prepositions before them. You see, with is a preposition. Yeah? If we are using with, that means you did the action with that person. If you did the action at the person, we say, the boy at whom you laughed is here. The man for whom I work has died. Oh, sorry. Sorry, the man has died. Anyway, the man for whom I work has died. Yeah? The person about whom I told you is there. Yeah? That is using whom. Remember, we use it to refer to only people. And whose is used to refer to, to talk about ownership, possession. Look at the sentence. The woman whose daughter won an award is over there. The woman whose daughter won an award is over there. In other words, the woman is over there. Her daughter won an award. If we are writing those sentences and joining them as one, we can use whose. But you will see there are two commas in that sentence. The comma after the subject and a comma after the relative clause. Why? Because we had two independent clauses. Two independent clauses. If we have only one clause, then we don't use double commas in the sentence. If we say, that is the boy whose pen got lost. We don't need two sentences. But, we don't need two commas. But if you see, here we have two subjects almost. The woman and then the daughter. Each one in an independent clause. And because of that, so we use these commas as separators. First of all, to separate the first subject from the second subject. And to separate the relative clause from the other clause that refers to the first subject. Okay, so the woman whose daughter won an award is over there. I want us to look at when, what, and where. These are not relative pronouns. They are not relative pronouns. Though some people take them as relative pronouns because you see when describes the time of a verb. But it does not connect us to a relative clause. Therefore, it is not a relative pronoun. It is just a pronoun that answers the question of when, telling us the time of the verb. Then what? These ones, now what? We saw what in the interrogative pronouns to ask questions that need information, to ask for title, color, shape, name, etc. You can mention many. And also we use it in what? Exclamatory sentences. Those sentences that express strong feelings, surprises. For example, if you see, what a colorful day this is. What a colorful day this is. Yeah, you are using what to express a strong feeling. In other words, you want to show, wow. Okay? I don't know what an elephant looks like. You know what happens? People put how here. I don't know what an elephant looks like. What, not how. Okay? It is not a relative pronoun, it is an interrogative pronoun. Okay? Where describes the place of the action. Where did the action take place? You'll say, she forgot where she kept the money. Now, friends, I'm sure you have understood how we can use these relative pronouns in sentences, and therefore you will try these numbers. Only 5 of them. Number 1, that is the man. That is the man. His cow fell into a deep pit yesterday. So you will join these sentences and use whose. Okay? You'll join the 2 sentences and use whose. When you look at number 2, the chief had died. I told you about him. Rewrite and use whom. I have given quite a number of examples about that. So you can continue up to number 5. Try in your book, and when we meet again, we shall go through and see who did it better. I sign off.